宿題で出ていた星の観察ノート見せてもらったよ。素晴らしいノートがあったからみんなに紹介したいと思う。
Sensei, why does that book mostly just have Kira Yaba written all over it, and also have a bunch of pictures of some blue or maybe green-haired girl taped in it? Cold open for this episode, that the previous one previewed as being a bit more of a serious outing that was going to focus on the ongoing Kayako's social anxiety subplot, had Doremi goofily wish upon a star for a big juicy steak. Yeah, a slight mismatch for the general tone of this episode, even though there's a similar scene later in the episode, but what else to do with this show, really? And even if it was a little tonally off, stars will play a significant part of this episode. I mean, either that, or you could just look at Kentro's chest. But yeah, I guess Doremi was more into JoJo than Fist of the North Star, as instead of listening to Seki's lecture that would be very important for her homework later, she read a letter from the aforementioned Kayako. The truant girl really did want to go to school, but again, her anxieties got the best of her, and she was turning into a hikikomori. Her issues would only compile when her teachers would regularly stop by and try to talk things out with her and her parents, but the mother would always have to turn them away. We'll talk more about this later, but you could already really read into what both the mother and daughter were thinking, which is a sign of a good episode. At the same time, Doremi, again because she didn't pay attention in class, couldn't find the North Star, which is a part of their assignment. The star itself is actually really easy to find. I mean, all you really have to do is look up, and it's going to be the only star that stays in one place all night and is one of the brightest in the sky. Left with few options, she tried to call her friends, but Pop was hogging the phone for some very important reasons. This is why you don't expose your little girls to those Twitch thoughts. Thus, Doremi did the one thing you should never do in a grudge movie and went to Kayako's house. Though it was rather appropriate, considering reading her letter was kind of what caused all of this. And while this social recluse did deserve some sympathy, she was also kind of faking the severity of her condition. Like again, I get that she really does need help, but you really should at least come down for dinner, girl. Or at the very least, to help a classmate with her homework. And to her credit, she basically held a full-on Astronomy 101 class just for Doremi that I really can't add much to, even though I'm usually obsessed with giving an excessive amount of detail to any subject, which we did kind of do a few seconds ago, but still, not much to add here, so yeah, good stuff. It also really highlighted how Kayako really wanted to go back to school if she was at least somewhat keeping up with their curriculum with her frequent trips to the library. This is also where the steak stuff from the cold opener came in, as Doremi wished for her big slab of meat. This also got her to talk about her latest creation. Yeah, it's almost as if you shouldn't have included actual beef in your cookies. Maybe try bacon next time, it actually works really good with sweets. And for likely the first and only time in her whole school career, Doremi's homework got special mention from the teacher. Granted, she did get more than a helping hand from Kayako, which got the attention of Seki and unfortunately Eustace Jr. Yeah, again, more on him later, but first Seki asked for a favor from Doremi. Though clearly she wasn't doing A for the library. But yeah, she gave her a necklace that was supposed to be a fragment of a shooting star, which I guess if you can't turn it into a sword, you may as well just turn it into jewelry, right? Of course, it was supposed to be like a wishing star and comfort Kayako. Yeah, just a really wholesome gift from Doremi to show her thanks for her help, which was then ruined by Joey Wheeler Jr. Anyone else for taking the fat from this kid's chin to make some soap? Though weirdly enough, his chin here was nowhere near as prominent as previous outings, which I think you could blame on Mitsuru Aoyama, and his insistence that everyone stick to his really half-assed designs for his episodes. I swear, I'm gonna throw a party when that guy finally retires. Anyway, his absolutely heartless words would end up re-triggering Kayako. As a result, she had felt like she had become a burden to everyone, including her mother and teachers who were stressing out over her situation. Fortunately, she had a friend like Doremi who she could compare herself with, as she was far more of a legit nuisance to everyone. I mean, at the very least, I don't think you should talk to them for at least a few days. Regardless, true friends would always be able to tolerate a friend like Doremi, and thus Kayako didn't need to worry about it, when really a lot of her issues are actually kinda self-imposed. Hell, if anything, being hated by the Balchinian Jr. should be considered a badge of honor. However, for people with social anxieties, you can't just say that they're not a problem, as that just might end up reinforcing their issues. Doremi, of course, couldn't exactly pick up on this and what they could do to help, thus they just kind of turned back to old reliable. And then a big middle finger came down and told them to figure things out for themselves. Honestly, I'm not even really kidding, as it just gave them a tape recorder and mic to interview their classmates and teachers to get to the root of the problem. And after a few really pointless interviews for the sake of quote-unquote comedy, because it wouldn't be a Yoshimi Naruto script without a few worthless jokes, they were able to interview the main instigator, who showed no regret for his clearly hurtful actions. Okay, forget the soap. Let's just throw that chin and what's unfortunately attached to it to the wolves. Yeah, while I've been told that he will receive some sort of karma in a future episode, the living embodiment of that one hand on the shoulder meme is now officially my least favorite character in the show. Like, they even showed a clip from his previous Spotlight episode where he was in that election against Reika, and they made it clear that he hadn't learned a single thing from his hurtful words back then. In short, screw him and his movie 43 chin. Yeah, I'm not going to show an actual image for that movie because, well, I'd probably get demonetized. Anyway, even though it was pretty clear what the problem was, the Ojamajo were still unable to figure out what they could do for Kayako, so yeah, arguably this was one of the first times that the magical stage just kind of outright failed on them. Regardless, they decided to at least pay Kayako another visit with their treats in hand. It led to a really nice moment where they were able to assure her that she wasn't a burden at all, with a lot of positive reinforcement, plus a little comedy, when comparing her with Doremi, which is actually an effective way of using gags in an episode like this, rather than it just feeling superfluous. On top of that, their teacher soon arrived to give their 2 cents, and revealed that the necklace was actually from Seki, who wanted to pass it on to her student. Meanwhile, Yuki revealed that she had set up a desk in her nurse's office, tacked as a bit of a halfway point between her home and the actual classroom. With that, Kayako at least tried to make it to the school the next day, which resulted in a callback to her previous episode. Fortunately, they didn't go all the way with this callback, as the Ojamajo intercepted her, and again, with their support, she managed to make her first baby steps to going back to class by at least making it to Yuki's office, ending the episode on a very hopeful note for her future. This was just an excellent follow-up to an excellent episode. I mean, granted, it wasn't as impactful as the previous outing, if only because you really can't recreate that shocking landmine at the end of that episode, but it was still quite powerful in its own right. I do have some little nitpicks, and a certain chin remains awful to say the very least. As I think I mentioned previously, I'm definitely no major authority on social anxiety, at least at Kayako's level, so I can't speak on how well the show handled the subject matter. That said, as a guy who can appreciate good characters and story, well, this more than held my attention. I think what worked effectively about this storyline was how they used a lot of visual storytelling rather than just explaining everything. This is a really good call as, one, I don't think the writers have much more authority on anxiety as me, and 2, it's just basic storytelling, show, don't tell, and all that. As a result, we were really able to get into Kayako's story and feel for her struggles. Granted, some of her struggles felt a little much like with Kaiji Jr. Yes, he worked as an effective antagonistic force for this particular story, but between this episode and the election, he really has become a character who I'm just not interested in seeing on screen anymore, because he really doesn't develop and his chin is probably his only notable trait. Though even that was significantly reduced due to Mitsuru Aoyama doing the animation for this one, and his need for conformity in his designs in order to maintain his consistently lazy animation. Still, those aspects did take away from a great script that even threw in a good amount of comedic levity to balance out some of the heavier subject matter. Sure, not all of it made me laugh, but it was appropriate for the most part. And overall, this is just a great follow-up and step forward in Kayako's arc. She's taking some baby steps to get better, which is quite endearing, whilst this kid's chin reduction surgery hasn't really done him any favor. Thanks for watching us finally get back onto our proper schedule. Yeah, I had to take an extra week off after getting back from my Japan trip for these Wednesday reviews, but we got back eventually, right? So, look forward to whatever comes next, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and if you excuse me, I'm just gonna go watch a little tutorial on how to make soap.
To make soap, first we render fat.